So I'm going to show you guys a picture. It's pretty provocative. It's shown by the Strong for Life organization. It was a campaign that didn't want to sugarcoat obesity, specifically within children in the U.S., and just kind of warn people of America. So, warning, chubby kids may not outlive their parents. Warning, fat kids become fat adults. Warning, big bones didn't make me this way, big meals did. Warning, he has his father's eyes, his laugh, and maybe even his diabetes. So in America alone, there has been over 300,000 deaths a year just caused by obesity. And people don't die of obesity, people die of the effects of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and even bone and joint health. So cardiovascular disease, over 600,000 deaths a year are caused by that. It's not due to obesity, but obesity is one of the many factors linked to this. So it's important to look at what's going on with this and what factors are, contributing to these rates. So here are some stats, children in the U.S. So it's looking at the y-axis. It shows the top 3 race and ethnicities being affected by this. Latinos, and these are children, keep in mind. So Latino children having 23% obesity, and then blacks going into about 20%, whites about 14%, and all children about 17% obese. And I want to show you guys another graph that also shows the percentage of children that are not only obese, but are also considered overweight. And the reason why it's important to look at that is because we want to make sure that we're preventing obesity, and what not. It's a better way to look at children that are overweight first, because in order to be obese, one must first be overweight. So looking at the next graph, the x-axis has changed a little bit. As you can see now, it's down a lot larger to 45%. Y-axis remains the same. So looking at Latino children that are obese and adding the ones that are overweight, almost 40%. Blacks, 33%. Whites, 28%. And then all children about 32%. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but in the year, in 1970, only 5% of children in the U.S. were considered obese. And now we have 17%. And these are statistics that not all people look at, because we ignore the ones that are overweight, just looking at the ones that are already obese. So it's important to look at both, because one is affected by the other. So a study conducted by Burge, she pretty much wanted to look at different factors, around the dinner table, during family, mealtime. So if you look at all participants, so starting on the y-axis, we have the minutes spent eating. And then we have on the x-axis the participants involved, the families. And so this is just one of the factors you look at. It was the amount of time spent eating. And what it's showing here is that in the non-overweight families, so families that weren't obese or considered overweight as a whole, spent about 18.5 minutes eating. And the families that were considered overweight and obese spent about almost 16 minutes eating. So as you can see, there's a time difference in the amount of time spent eating. So with this being said, we want to see if this may be a factor that may be contributing to the obesity rates. And so going into the gaps within the study, they only focused on black and white families, not very little on anything else. And as you can see, Latino children are mostly being affected by this endemic, so why not pull out these types of families and see what's going on with them, as also other families, but we want to look at that. So they also didn't have any younger children, they just had adolescents, and then they also compared obese and overweight families in one lump sum group as opposed to separating them. So in my current study, it actually comes out of a much larger study. For the past year, we've been collecting data looking at family dynamics around a dinner table, and we observed 173 families at 3 different McDonald's locations located in PG, one in PG, and 2 in Salinas, and one on Veranda Avenue in Salinas, and the other on Alisal Avenue in Salinas. And the reason why we chose McDonald's was because we wanted to have something that was consistent among all 3 locations, and McDonald's just happened to be the restaurant that was presented in all 3 locations. And so my research question was, is there a relationship between the Spanish-speaking families and the English-speaking families and the amount of time spent eating? And my hypothesis was that the Spanish-speaking families will eat a lot faster than the English-speaking families. And the reason why I hypothesized that was because it is showing that Latino children are, and also in adults, they're having these high obesity rates. And I want to see what's going on. But since this came out of a much larger study, we weren't able to look at the actual race and ethnicity because it was direct observational. They didn't know we were observing them. So there's only certain things that we can look at. But Spanish-speaking families, I wanted them to represent that Latino, family endemic going on. So that's kind of why I hypothesized that. And like Birds was showing, that the obese and overweight families were eating a lot faster than these families that were, considered not underweight but normal weight. They were eating a lot slower. So that's where my hypothesis came from. And like I said, we went to these McDonald's restaurants, took a seat, we waited for a family to walk in, and family just being defined as a parent and some type of child going between the ages of an infant till around adolescence. So only 85 of the 170 families could be actually coded because of the observation sheets. Only the 85 showed any signs of starting to eat and ending to eat. So that was how I can observe. And like I said, we used observation sheets and everything was coded after every 3 minutes. We took these snapshots of what they were doing, how many caregivers were present, how many kids were present. And from that is exactly how I interpreted my results. So doing a t-test, if you look at the x-axis, it shows the Spanish-speaking families and the English-speaking families, and the y-axis showing the minutes spent eating. So the Spanish-speaking families spent about 11 and a half minutes eating. English-speaking families spent about 15 minutes eating or so, 15 and a half minutes eating. So as you can see, the Spanish-speaking families did eat a lot faster than the English-speaking families. So I just stated that up above, and what does this mean? This means that time spent eating could possibly be a factor contributing to the national obesity rates, and a lot more further research would have to be done to prove this and to predict a child's health in the future. They can look at the actual race and ethnicity among the families. They can actually track how much they weigh, what they're eating, go to different restaurants. There are many different things that can be looked at to prove this right. And like I said, Birds was showing that the overweight and obese families were spending a lot of time eating, and that's kind of where I hypothesized this, and stats show that the Spanish-speaking families were eating a lot faster. So with this being said, hopefully future research can be done just to look at that one factor contributing to obesity. And yeah, thank you.